I just listened to every album by AC/DC, and here are my thoughts. So going in, I knew pretty much all of AC/DC's hits and one or two handfuls of their deep cuts. I had bought a couple albums like High Voltage and Highway to Hell, and then I had their two live albums, If You Want Blood, You Got It, and AC/DC Live from 1990. So not exactly going in blind. Still a lot here that was new to me, new being a relative term, because I don't think any band is the same as much as AC/DC is. And that's absolutely not a criticism. The one thing that they do it so well that they got famous off of it, they made money off of it. How can you blame them for that? So I'm just going to go through their international releases. In their first couple of years, they had a few albums that were only Australian releases. If you want to check out those songs, most of them are available on the Jailbreak EP, and then a couple stragglers are available on the Backtracks compilation. And AC/DC starts off on such a consistent high. High Voltage, the international version released in 1976, is one of my favorite AC/DC albums. It's not my favorite, but it's up there. This album is definitely known for songs like It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll and The Jack, but it has a lot of really good lesser-known tracks, a lot of really good deep cuts here, like Little Lover, Can I Sit Next to You, Girl, and She's Got Balls. The next two albums, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap and Let There Be Rock, to me are just a hair under High Voltage. I think for Dirty Deeds, that is a common opinion, not for Let There Be Rock. A lot of people put Let There Be Rock a little bit higher. Now with Dirty Deeds, the title track of this album is, of course, pretty legendary, very well known. But Rocker and Problem Child are also just fantastic songs. Those were a couple big standouts to me. And then from Let There Be Rock, the title track of this album is just a monumental achievement, a huge anthem to rock music. I love the live version of this song a lot more than the studio version here. But Whole Lotta Rosie and Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be are also your main standout tracks from this album here. And then their next two albums, I think, are a step above High Voltage. So we start off with Powerage, which was maybe their most energetic album. So many great songs from this one. Riff Raff is definitely in my top 5 favorite AC/DC songs. But you also get Rock and Roll Damnation and Sin City. Sin City is a great song here. And then What's Next to the Moon is a deep cut that I was previously unfamiliar with that was a pretty big standout to me. Now, I know Highway to Hell like the back of my hand because I had it as a kid. I think everyone knows the title track from here. But the album is just so consistently solid all the way through and features a few really good hard rockers, in kind of a similar vein as Highway to Hell. And to me, these would be Beating Around the Bush, Shot Down in Flames, If You Want Blood, You Got It. And then the closing track, Night Prowler, is another one of my top 5-ish AC/DC songs. Now, after Highway to Hell, tragedy strikes the band, and their vocalist, Bon Scott, is found passed away from alcohol poisoning. So they hire a new vocalist, Brian Johnson. And if we're just comparing voices, I definitely prefer Bon Scott's voice to Brian Johnson's. Bon Scott's voice sounded so much more natural, whereas Brian Johnson's sounds kind of forced and strained and a little bit more animated. Still, though, AC/DC absolutely does not stop being AC/DC, and they release Back in Black, one of the most legendary rock albums of all time. And I think this is their best album. I think pretty much everyone thinks that. But no other AC/DC album is just front to back packed with hits like this one is. This album, of course, has its monstrous hits like Hell's Bells, another one of my top 5. The title track, Shoot to Thrill, and how am I blanking on this last one? You Shook Me All Night Long, duh. And those are songs that everyone knows. If you flip to classic rock radio, that'll definitely be on there. But then there are like a lesser tier of songs on here that are still definitely hits, like Giving the Dog a Bone and Rock and Roll Like Noise Pollution, and one of my deep cut favorites, if you can call it that, which was Have a Drink on Me. And then 1 year later, they release For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. This is a pretty solid album, with the title track being another top 5 track for me. So if you're keeping track, I think I have 4 out of 5 songs so far in my top 5. This is another one of those cases where the live version on 1990s AC/DC Live, I think, is way better. They turned up the drama, the energy. The last part of the song is a bit faster and more powerful. The rest of this album is pretty solid. This is the first time I heard an AC/DC song that I truly disliked, though. Like, it was torture to get through, and that was Let's Get It Up. I just really didn't like that song. But Put the Finger on You and Snowballed were a couple songs that stood out to me a little bit more than the rest of this album. So now we're in the era where people kind of stop caring about AC/DC, but they definitely don't stop making their music. Unfortunately, they never make an album that is as good as Back in Black or Highway to Hell. Still have some good albums and really good standout tracks from here on out, though. Now, in 1983, they released Flick of the Switch, and from online discourse that I've gathered, some AC/DC fans kind of insist that this is a work of secret genius. I don't really hear it, though. This is my least favorite album that I've heard so far. It got off to a particularly slow start. The title track didn't even really jump out to me, but right after that, you had Nervous Shakedown, which I think was the best song on the album. Landslide and Brain Shake were also pretty good. Landslide particularly popped out at me. So if you're looking for AC/DC deep cuts, definitely check that one out. Next you have Fly on the Wall from 1985, which I think was marginally better than Flick of the Switch, especially for its title track. The Fly on the Wall is just a fantastic song. Shake Your Foundations and Sink the Pink were a couple others that really stood out. And these were, I think, the 3 main hits from the album. The rest of the album was pretty forgettable. And then Blow Up Your Video comes out in 88. And this album opens with Heat Seeker, which is one of a handful of like latter day AC/DC hits that they bring out that shows that somewhere in there's still absolutely the same spark that they had back in their classic days. And then there was a deep cut on this album that I can't recommend enough. It was Nick of Time. I loved this song. I did take note of the riffs from Rough Stuff and Two's Up, as I like the riffs. I just felt like the rest of the songs, the rest of those 2 songs wasn't as developed as well. Now, AC/DC has a mini comeback in 1990 with Razor's Edge, which starts out with the song Thunderstruck, song everybody knows, and this is the final song in my top 5 that I haven't covered yet. It might even be number 1. Oh my God, this song is just brimming with so much adrenaline. There was plenty of other stuff to like on this album too, like Fire Your Guns was really good. Money Talks was amazing. AC goes into another career slump. They released Ball Breaker in 95, which only had one song that kind of jumped out at me, and it wasn't even that much, and that was the album's lead single, Hard as a Rock. And then Stiff Upper Lip comes out in 2000, which was only marginally better than Ball Breaker to me. The title track and Can't Stop Rock and Roll were your main standouts from here. I Feel Safe in New York City and Satellite Blues were kind of on a lower tier, but still pretty good. Then in 2008 comes Black Ice. I actually remember when this album came out. Walmart was stocked with loads of these CDs. Now, I think the title track of Black Ice is the best song on here. I don't love its lead single, Rock and Roll Train. And then a few deep cuts here, like Anything Goes, Rock and Roll Dream, which surprised me. And then Wheels. I feel like no one ever talks about Wheels, but I really liked it. It's really high energy, a good classic AC/DC kind of rocker. Then Rocker Bust comes out in 2014, and I was a little surprised by this album. Still on the lower end of their albums overall, but it's better than the last handful. I didn't love the title track, but Play Ball, its lead single, definitely is one of the standout tracks. Also got Rock the Blues Away and Baptism by Fire. Those were pretty cool songs. Only a little bit of time left, but in 2020 they released Power Up, which is the best album they have done since Razor's Edge. In fact, I think it's a little bit better than Razor's Edge. So many great songs here, like Realize, Shot in the Dark, Witch's Spell, Demon's Fire, Through the Mists of Time. God, I love that song. There's my album ranking. The top 2 are legendary status. From Powerage to Razor's Edge, you get a decline, but that's still a tier that I would consider albums that I came away with positive thinkings. Like AC/DC is definitely doing their thing, and they're doing it well. And then from Blow Up Your Video to Ball Breaker, these were albums that I felt like these were on the weaker end. They're not at their best here. Thank you for watching. Aerosmith's up next.